All right, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to hand over to Deshanya Naidoo, our speaker this morning, joining us from GreenCape and discussing the SA Plastics Pact.
Cool, thanks. Good morning, everyone. I'm just confirming you can see my presentation and you can't see my notes. All right, awesome. Okay, good morning, everyone, and thanks so much for having me today. I will be speaking on behalf of the South African Plastics Pact on how the pact is a collaborative approach to creating a circular economy for plastics. So today, just to give you an overview of how the presentation will go, we'll discuss at a very high level what a circular economy is, an overview of the South African Plastics Pact, some of the progress of the pact, the way forward, and then I'll be speaking a little bit about GreenCape and the work that I do at GreenCape. Cool, so let's get started. When I kind of started with putting this presentation together, I realized that if you actually don't know what a circular economy is, this presentation will kind of be lost on you, which is why I decided to add just a little bit of framing. So I've included two definitions, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of definitions of a circular economy available, at the moment. So the first one that I think, that speaks to me the best at the moment, just because of how simple it is a circular economy is a decoupling of economic growth from resource extraction. And that just really speaks to the delinking of economic activities from resource extraction, really by keeping materials and products in circulation. The second definition is a bit more of a popular definition, and that's because it's used by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So if you are familiar with the concept of a circular economy, you probably do know the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. They are the leading institution for a circular economy in the world. And they define circular economy as restorative and regenerative by nature. It represents a shift away from the reliance of the extraction of raw materials to using materials that are already in circulation. So the circular economy is based on three principles, and these principles are driven by design. The first being to eliminate waste and pollution, the second being to circulate products and materials, and the last one being to regenerate nature. And since I work in the circular economy in a country like South Africa, which is a developing economy, I've decided to add my own fourth principle in, which is, to preserve and or create jobs and inclusive economic opportunities. So that's really an important part of a circular economy, and kind of the reason why I'm so passionate about working in this space in a country like South Africa. So a circular economy really allows for to increase the length of a value chain. So for example, we often talk about a linear economy and a circular economy. A linear economy is often referred to as a take, make, waste economy. So basically what happens in that system is you take resources from the earth, you then make it into a product or something that you're going to use. You then use it and then you waste it and it's lost to the environment or to landfills. The value of that product's lost. Whereas in a circular economy, you then have a whole secondary life for materials after they've been used by a consumer. So in that secondary life for the materials, you're really allowing for the value chain to be extended. So that's allowing for more players and more inclusive opportunities to be created. So you're really attaching value to waste. More people are able to contribute and be able to create jobs and create more opportunities in a circular economy than in a linear economy. So how does a circular economy link up with plastics? So in a circular economy for plastics, it offers a vision for an economy in which plastic never becomes a waste. And I'd really like to emphasize an evidence-based approach to build a circular economy in our local context. There are many aspects of a circular economy which have the potential for development in South Africa. And as I said, they're likely to create income opportunities as well as economic development to sustain the circularity of our plastics. And I guess this is where I'm going to now introduce the Plastics Pact. So the Plastics Pact is really a model, and it's a network of national and regional initiatives to drive ambitious action towards a common vision for a circular economy for plastics. So how the Plastics Pact model really works is that it's quite spread across the world geographically. You can see that South Africa was the first pact. The South African Plastics Pact was the first pact in Africa. And now we do have our sisters in Kenya with their Plastics Pact, and there are a few other pacts on the African continent under development at the moment. And Being part of this global network of plastics pacts really allows us to synergize across regions in sharing best practice and linking to experts in other settings. And what's really awesome about being part of a network of plastics pacts is that you're able to leverage a very powerful network of experts who are all at different stages of the journey. So not all the pacts were started at the same time. There's some currently under development. There were some that were started during even this year and some that were started up to, I think, 3 years ago. So we're all at different stages. We're able to really leverage each other's insights and support each other along this journey to create a circular economy for plastics. Particularly at the South African Plastics Pact, our vision is a world where plastic is valued and doesn't pollute the environment. So the South African Plastics Pact was launched in January 2020. And as I said, we do form part of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the Global Plastics Pact Network. So the way in which the Plastics Pact works is that we have members that commit to our targets. So at the moment, we have 4 targets, and our members commit to achieving these targets by 2025, well, by the end of 2025. So the first target is to eliminate unnecessary and problematic plastic packaging. The second is for 100% of plastic packaging to be reusable, recyclable, or compostable. The third is a national target. So it's one we have slightly less influence on, or our members have slightly less influence on, is 70% of plastic packaging to be effectively recycled. And our fourth target is 30% of average recycled content across all plastic packaging. So you can definitely see how these targets really link into each other. For example, target 2, which makes sure that our packaging is designed so that it can be recycled in our local context, links well with target 4, which stimulates demand for recycled content. So it's really attaching an economic value to our waste. As I mentioned before, we have members that sign up to our targets. So we have both business and supporting members. Business members are organizations that form part of the plastics value chain, and supporting members create the environment for members to reach targets. So our business members really do span the length of the plastics value chain. We start all the way from our resin producers until we get to our recyclers. We even have converters, retailer members, and our big brand owners. And supporting members include our producer responsibility organizations, a municipality, national government, informal recycling collectors, and other industry bodies. And this shows a really comprehensive picture, as our business and supporting members, as I said, do play a role across the plastics value chain. And in many instances, a shift to a circular economy requires a systems change. For a systems change to be possible at this scale, it does require the participation of collaborators from across the value chain. This is a non-competitive space, and our members are really able to share and learn from each other's successes and mistakes with a shared goal and a common purpose. Okay, cool. So now we know what a plastics pact is, we know what our targets are, and we know who our members are and who is involved. But how does this align with the circular economy? As I mentioned before, the definition of a circular economy was driven by 3 principles, and then I added my 4th one. So I'm going to try and show you in this picture how the Plastics Pact works to create a circular economy. So here are our design principles. And if we have to look at our diagram, you can see that in a circular economy, we'd have renewably sourced virgin feedstock. So at the moment, virgin feedstock for plastic generally comes from oil. So it isn't renewable at the moment, but in the future, it hopefully will come from renewable sources. It then goes into design and production. And then we have what we call our first high value loop. So once our material is used, it should then be reused, which should be a high value loop because our material is preserved at its highest economic and physical properties. The next stage is that it could either be aerobically digested or composted, and then those minerals were to return back to the earth. Then we have recycling. So it's a common mistake that circular economy is mistaken for recycling. Yet, as you can see in this diagram, recycling is actually one of our lower value loops. It has a very important role to play in a circular economy, but it's not a circular economy. So there's a very important differentiation to make between open and closed loop recycling. So closed loop recycling is when a bottle, for instance, a plastic bottle is recycled back into a bottle. Whereas open loop recycling is where a bottle would be recycled into another material. So that is in another sector. For example, it could go into fiber that goes into our clothing. So in that way, we have different loops within our value chain and different end markets for our recycling activities in South Africa, or which have an important role to play in the circular economy. So how are we implementing the pact structure in South Africa? So I did also say this to Tara before the webinar started, that GreenCape is the secretariat to the South African Plastics Pact. So basically, we are the implementing agents to the pact model in South Africa. We are then governed by our steering committee, and our steering committee is made up of our members, government, and NGO that play a role in South Africa, and our finance subcommittee basically tell us what we can and can't afford to do. So at the beginning of the South African Plastics Pact, we had a roadmap development where the activities of the pact were outlined for the 5 years from 2022 to 2025. We then had members sign up, and we continue to welcome our members into the pact, and our members are required to report on the plastic packaging they place on the market to us. That's basically how we keep track of the progress of the pact. We then have special projects, and that's more vital to targets like target 3, where we don't have direct influence over the entire of our members. So special projects are where we work with other external funders or other collaborations to try and influence the sector. We then have communications with our members and externally, so that's in the form of webinars, newsletters, publications, and different campaigns. And where kind of the magic happens in the Plastics Pact is our action groups. So we have 8 action groups running at the moment. In our action groups, we have members, so the business and supporting members, and they really synergize on different topics, how they would like to move forward. They're able to discuss in really a non-competitive way how they see the industry moving forward under our targets. Cool. So as I mentioned, members are required to report into the pact on the plastic packaging they place in the market. So last year, we launched a baseline report demonstrating the findings from the data we had received. And from the findings that we had uncovered, we saw that brand owner and retailer members of the pact represent 29% of plastic packaging placed in the market in South Africa, and our converter members account for 27.6% of the plastic packaging placed in South Africa. So we do expect that these numbers have already substantially increased, and we look forward to updating them in the next cycle. But basically what it means at present is that if you had to go to the shops last year, 29 out of 100 products that you see would have been 29 out of 100 projects that you would see would be from members of the South African Plastics Pact. And if you'd like to know, differences between brand owners and retailers and converter members, then I do encourage you to have a look at our baseline report because it's all explained quite nicely there. Cool. So now we move more into looking at our progress under each target. So under target 1, which is our members have pledged to take action to eliminate problematic or unnecessary packaging, members are required to develop and adopt the best solutions to identify and eliminate problematic plastics. And this is mainly through the phasing out of items that are deemed unnecessary, substitution with a material that is well recycled, or innovation for the reuse of that item or redesign. And when members eliminate items, the consequences of this change must be considered and mitigated against. Specifically, if you're substituting one material for another, it shouldn't create an additional negative environmental impact, nor should food waste be increased as a result of the changes in packaging to the market. So as you can see, we have established a phase 1 list of problematic or unnecessary plastic packaging, but the phase 2 list is currently out for comment. And how that basically works is in our baseline report, we had our members report how much of this packaging that's on the list is represented by their membership. So we had 1,029 tons of problematic or unnecessary plastics placed in the market in South Africa as of last year. So, you know, at the moment, we're busy supporting our members to rethink products and services at the design stage. We do have action groups as well to support our members in the changes that they make. Oh, yes. And if you'd like to, you know, understand why these items are deemed unnecessary or problematic in the South African context, we do have a really thorough explanation on our website, and the publications are widely available. Okay, cool. Let's look under target 2. So under target 2, as you're aware, is 100% of plastic packaging to be reusable, recyclable, compostable. So where are we now? As of last year, when we you know, launched our baseline report, 80.7% of plastic packaging placed in the market by Pact members was recyclable. And then we were able to break that down into 69.9% of consumer and primary packaging, and 95.9% of retailer and secondary packaging. Once again, if you'd like to, you know, understand the difference between those types of packaging, I'd really encourage you to have a look at the baseline report. But I mean, as much as this may seem like a very pretty picture being painted, we do have to explore these numbers a bit more to understand exactly what's happening in our local setting. So for a product to be deemed recyclable in a South African context, it must be recycled at a 30% and over threshold. So it basically means that 80.7% of plastic packaging placed in the market being recycled means that 30% of that is being recycled in practice. So we still have a long way to go. And there's a lot of efforts that need to come into really creating a truly circular economy for plastics in South Africa. We have some really important steps that we need to take going forward. The first of which is unpack recycling labels. So a lot of work has been done last year on unpack recycling labels, where a design guideline was actually established, and that was going to be shared with brand owners and retailers to be applied to packaging. However, we decided not to go ahead with that just because there was no way to ensure that these principles would be applied, you know, these principles would be applied in a way that we could really have vigilance on. So we decided that we're going to go a different route, but unpack recycling labels are really important because it's the way that businesses and organizations are able to communicate with consumers. So as you can see, this is a systems change. So each part of the system needs to speak to each other. And unpack recycling labels are what we have to use to look at to understand what we need to do with our packaging after we use it. So they need to be easy to understand. They need to tell us exactly what's happening. And, you know, it needs to be something that people of different literacies and languages can understand as well. So we're hoping for the adoption of that over this year as well. We also held a reuse innovation challenge, which is really exciting. We had different organizations submit their ideas and organizations and their companies to us, and they were able to pitch that. We had a really awesome winner, which was iDrop Water, and you know, their information is also available on the website if you'd like to know more about it. And we hope to continue, you know, doing such challenges in the future. So we actually had, if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, Sonke, which was our second place winner of the reuse challenge. From them presenting to our membership, they were able to meet another one of our members, which is SPA. And this is a refill station, a trial station that they've just implemented, I think 2 weeks ago in SPA. So it really does show the plastic pack model in action, you know, getting things done. And it's a really nice way to demonstrate a really, really cool project. So this is a trial at the moment, and hopefully it's successful and we can see it in more of the spas around us in South Africa. So I kind of looked for what projects were under the go under target 2, and there were really so many. So I just picked some to explain that were seemed really interesting to me. So in terms of the projects on the go, we have a benchmark life cycle assessment on a refill model in South Africa. So this is actually on Sonke. So Sonke is an automated refill station. And as I mentioned, they were the runners up of our 2021 SA Plastics Pact and Marva Foundation Reuse Innovation Challenge. And they will provide a case study on which a life cycle model of a reusable packaging system in South Africa can be developed. And the LCA will provide the first life cycle data set on a reusable packaging system in South Africa. And in doing so, it will enable the life cycle environmental impact comparison of reusable and single-use packaging systems in South Africa. The results of this LCA will be analyzed, and the key parameters such as transport distance, number of reuses of bottles affecting the environmental performance will be used to construct a simple high-level tool that can be used to explore the benefits of reusable packaging systems over single-use packaging systems from a life cycle perspective. What's really awesome about this project as well is that reuse systems can have benefits to consumers. So the benefits of reuse systems can really be cheaper product delivery to lower income customers and a better recovery of materials, especially suited for areas some distance away from recycling plants. If you're unaware of how waste management works in South Africa, there are areas that don't have access to waste management facilities. So making those areas have access to even recycling systems is still a long way to go. So by us looking at these innovative new business models, such as reuse and refill systems, we're really able to create an inclusive circular economy that is designed for all the participants and all citizens of South Africa. We then have a reuse seed project. This is a really exciting project that we're going to run this year. And as part of this project, we require a partner to provide a premises within a shopping mall or food court space to implement a reuse trial project. And the partner would be required to host or implement the reuse system to cycle the packaging within the chosen area. We're hoping that it would be something to do with on-the-go packaging, such as coffee cups. And hopefully, if you are in South Africa, you'd be able to partake in this trial, and hopefully it would be successful and we can see it running out into more shopping malls and areas near you. We also have a reuse action group. So this action group will innovate on specific products in collaboration to design reuse models specific for our context. Cool, we'll have a look under target 3 now, which I mentioned was our national target, which is 70% of plastic packaging to be effectively recycled or composted by 2025. So where are we now? I think as a lot of you would be aware, we had our extended producer responsibility regulations gazetted and are currently being implemented in South Africa. While that was under development, we commented on behalf of our members who would obviously be paying members to the scheme. We also have other projects underway, such as an informal sector integration project, and that involves training and alignment of waste pickers in local municipalities. There are various other special projects, as I mentioned, with external funders. We also contribute to various publications and put out publications ourselves to influence the sector. We have also another really cool project on the go, which is a consumer communications campaign. And what's really awesome about this campaign, it's a white label campaign that was developed by our communications team at GreenCape. And we are able to share this information with our members who are able to brand it under their branding and, communicate it out to the public. And in that way, we're able to send out a more concise messaging on, using products responsibly and the work that these organizations are undertaking to partake in the circular economy. Cool, so now we're moving on to our last target. So the 4th target is to reach an average of 30% recycled content across all members' plastic packaging by 2025. So the aim of this target is really to encourage closed loop recycling of plastic packaging, maintaining high material quality and value in the economy, as well as increasing the demand for recycled material, which would then boost the recycling rate to achieve the 70% input recycling rate under target 3. So by increasing demand, the value of plastic packaging at the end of its life will also increase, encouraging higher collection rates and a higher recycling rate in the country. We acknowledge that some of these types of products will be recycled to produce other types of products in non-packaging, so open loop recycling. And we do believe that this open loop recycling is complementary to help us reach our targets. So what have we done under this target so far? We've developed a list of 5 quick wins to increase or bolster recyclable content in both primary and consumer packaging. And you can see these 5 quick wins here. In the baseline report, we were able to see that members saved 43,800 tons of of virgin plastics in 2020, and that was by using recycled content alternatives. And based on 2020 figures, an additional 25,400 tons of recyclate is required to attain the Pact target of 30% post-consumer recycled content in packaging. So I decided to change things up a bit here and include an example of a member action that was taken under this target. So two of the main concerns that we have under recycled content inclusion. So the first of which is the quality of recycled content, available. And in many cases, the access to recycled content that we have is either dirty or contaminated with other organic products or oily substances. And that does result in a lower grade recycled content at the end of processing. The next of which is that many of these materials are actually colored, and there's no way to remove pigment from colored plastics after recycling. So you end up with kind of like a brownish gray, blackish recycled content at the end. I don't know if you guys have been to, I'm sure we've all been to many stores. I haven't seen many grayish black packaging. So, packaging is really important to marketers and general consumers to sell the products. So no one's really keen on using that. So that's where we had one of our members, SPA, decide to take action. So they realized that colored bottles and components mean that the recycled material has a lower value. And as I said, you cannot take color out of plastic. Therefore, colored plastic has a lower value and can only be included in dark colored packaging of products in its next life. This is what made SPA change their caps of their milk bottles to white, preserving the quality of the plastic to give it the best chance of being recycled into a high value product. So that's a really cool initiative. And there's so many examples of different actions our members have taken that are also available in our baseline report if you would like to see more of these examples. And we're even seeing more coming out this year. So we really do encourage this type of member action, and that does just show that there's positive change that's happening in the environment. And as I mentioned, we have various publications. So our publication on target for our quick wins to increase recycled content. This really is one of my favorite publications that we've put out. So if you're interested in this type of work, I would definitely recommend going onto our website and checking out these publications. Cool. In terms of our way forward, there are various action groups, as you can see, and projects planned for this year. So there's a lot of exciting work. We continue to work collaboratively with our members and other influencers across the value chain. Here I've just included some of our action groups for this year. So as I said, our action groups are comprised of members from across the plastics value chain and our supporting members. And this is just some of our action groups. We have other really exciting action groups, one of which I'm particularly excited about is we have our textiles and fashions member. So we're going to look at e-commerce packaging with them, which is going to be awesome. So there's really a lot of exciting work. I mean, I didn't even cover, I think, half of it in this presentation because there's just a lot going on. But I hope that, this was able to give you a comprehensive picture of how the pact is working and the projects that we're currently involved in. So I'm going to pivot the presentation a bit into about GreenCape. So as I said, GreenCape are the secretariats for the South African Plastics Pact, so we are the implementing agents of the pact. GreenCape is a not-for-profit organization that drives the widespread adoption of economically viable green economy solutions, specifically in South Africa. I work in the circular economy team at GreenCape, as well as the WISP team. But you can see there are various other teams working in different sectors in the green economy. So I'm going to just explain a little bit about WISP because I think it's a really, really awesome project that we have underway. So if you aren't familiar with industrial symbiosis, I really encourage you to write it down and Google it after this presentation. Industrial symbiosis has a very important role to play in the circular economy. It's basically using one organization or company's waste as another company's resource. And why I love this project so much is because it shows the demonstrated impact that a circular economy or circular economy concepts can have on a country. So specifically for this project, to date, WISP has facilitated over 220 synergies, resulting in more than 147 million rand worth of economic benefits, 392 economy-wide jobs through the diversion of 132,566 tons of plastic waste from landfill. So it's really demonstrated impact. It shows how once you attach value to waste, you're able to create jobs, you're able to reap economic benefits. Other projects that I also work on in GreenCape are really meeting different organizations through WISP, which has been amazing, and just understanding how different companies work. And what I really love about this is I'm able to write, different case studies and contribute knowledge to a sector that I'm so passionate about, and really shape the narrative. Since the circular economy at the moment is mainly spoken about and really being developed in a developed world context, not really in a developing world country such as South Africa. So we're able to shape the narrative and the way that we implement these strategies in our country. So that actually brings me to the end of my very long presentation. I hope that it was informative to you. If you have any questions, or you just like to chat more, you're more than welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn or send me an email. My email address is on screen. And as I mentioned, the GreenCape website and the Plastics Pact website really have so many incredible bits of knowledge that you can really learn from. So I encourage you to have a look at that as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really, really interesting to hear about the work that the Plastics Pact and that GreenCape is doing. I see we do have a question so long in the Q&A box that says, thanks for the informative presentation, Deshanya. Is the 70% recycling target aligned to the input recycling rates? And if so, is there a preliminary indication as to what is currently compared to the currently being recycled, I believe, compared to the 45 or 46% in 2019?
Yeah, so it is an input recycling rate. That is the target. If so, is there any preliminary indication as to what is currently compared to the 45, 46? Yeah, so there is a comparison in the baseline report. I think, I'm speaking very high level here just because the data isn't as nice as we would hope for it to be. But yeah, so what is currently? Yeah, so compared to the 45, 46%, that was kind of what we used as well, the Plastics SA data, to try and see how many more tons we'd have to unlock for recycling to achieve our target. I hope that that explains the question, but if not, Tahira, please reach out.
Thanks for the question, Tahira. And then I just had a few questions until we have a few more in the chat or the Q&A. In your primary goals and the actions for 2025, you mentioned that the drive to have more items be compostable, recyclable, reusable, things like that. In terms of compostability and the rest in general, do you have specific proportions that you're aiming for? Just to follow up with that, in terms of the circular economy, do you have any sort of comments on how compostable items would fit into that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we don't have a target specifically for compostable. It's something that at the moment we not overlooked, but it doesn't really fit into a South African context, just because there is no infrastructure at the moment for the compostability of plastic packaging. So what we're focusing on more is definitely the reuse aspects, as well as designing for products to be so designing for circularity, designing for our products to be able to be recycled or be able to be reused. So compostability, we don't even have an action group for it at the moment. To be honest, it's not something that is concentrated on just because of the lack of infrastructure.
Certainly, and I believe that Cape Town in general is a bit more advanced in terms of its compostable facilities and the kind of industrial composting conditions that are often required for composting packaging.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. It's just also that a lot of because of the landfill ban and the gate fee price in Cape Town, it has really incentivized other solutions to crop up. But at the same time, composting of actual plastic packaging, it's generally PLA, which requires very, very specific enzymes and a specific temperature to be able to be composted. And in many cases, that industrial composting isn't actually available and it takes a long time. So those solutions are generally concentrated to food organic waste.
Sure, so certainly. And I mean, in terms of your kind of plastic bottles and things like that, ideally you'd want them to be reused and then recycled rather than composted. I imagine.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
And then I just wanted to check, you mentioned the consumer communication plan that you used in collaboration with a number of your partners. I was just wondering if you have any sort of metrics on that, just in terms of sort of impact that's been measured possibly, or sort of number of people reached and things like that.
Yeah, so we do, and we are trying to currently track that. I mean, I don't really know the figures offhand, but we've had quite a few really awesome partners sharing. I mean, I've seen it just like when I'm scrolling through Instagram, I'm like, oh, there's our consumer communications campaign. So that's been really, really awesome to see different organizations sharing a very clear and concise message, because a lot of the time you see different organizations sharing different messages and it can become very confusing to the consumer. So by sharing just one voice, even though it's branded differently or may look a little bit different, it's really putting out a more consistent and concise message.
Certainly.
But yeah, sorry, I don't know the exact.
No,
sorry.
No problem. I did think it might be a bit of a long shot, but yeah, I can understand it's useful to have sort of a cohesive message that's being spread with amongst the partners. Then lastly, I just wondered if you could explain a little bit about the WISP project and the symbiosis that's sort of being promoted there. Is that in terms of I was just wondering if you could expand a little bit about maybe perhaps the types of businesses or the types of case studies that you've worked with on that.
Yeah, 100%. So what's really awesome about WISP, it's been concentrated on business to business. So we've mainly been supporting manufacturers within the city of Cape Town. So basically, there have been some really awesome what we call synergy. So synergy is basically a material transfer from one organization to another. We've seen large synergies between different companies where it's either a high value synergy where they have a waste stream such as ash, for example, which we know is like one of the biggest waste streams in the country, which is like fly ash and bottoms ash. And we've seen a really cool synergy recently where that's gone into making a brick. So we've been able to connect a foundry with a brick manufacturer, and they've been able to invest in infrastructure and in and also create employment to create bricks from that waste stream. So that's just an example of how that would work. We do concentrate on businesses just because that would allow us to unlock larger value waste streams. Because we do find that it's very time consuming, engaging with businesses, engaging with different people, and trying to find solutions for the waste within our, especially with the current legislative rules and waste management licenses that are required for such transfers. So that's why we concentrate on business to business. But I mean, there have been other smaller synergies, especially within the textile space of recent, where we see large companies diverting their textile offcuts to sewing schools, or so it's not just large businesses to large businesses, it's also smaller things that allow people to learn and upskill.
Okay, those are great examples, and they sound really encouraging, just in terms of the symbiosis that you spoke of, and a really vital role that you're playing there in terms of putting those businesses or smaller institutions in collaboration and into contact with one another. So that's wonderful to hear. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A box or in the chat at the moment. I'm not sure if any will come in the next few minutes, but thank you so much. I think I think you've answered all the questions I had. But
cool.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say thank you so much for having me, and I hope that it was informative and everyone understands a little bit more about the pact and GreenCape. And if anyone has any questions afterwards, they're more than welcome to reach out.
Certainly. And just to give a little bit of a gap in case anyone does come up with a question in the next few minutes, but I was just wondering if you could perhaps expand a little bit on the international scope of the Plastics Pact.
Yeah, sure. So As I mentioned, so the Ellen MacArthur Foundation are really the leading organization for the circular economy across the world. And they have a new plastics economy program under which the Plastics Pact model was developed. And how it works is that it's really, it was kind of like a model that was developed, and different countries are able to adopt it in a way that would suit their country. Because often cases, I feel like in sustainability, in my experience at least, is that I've seen, South Africa or other African continents try and adopt a Eurocentric model, which we know is not going to work because the landscape is completely different. So, people often think that that's what the Plastics Pact's about, but it's really not. We really did take the model, we adapted it to a South African context. Income creation and job creation are really at the heart of the model as well, especially in our context. So, that's what's really awesome about it. All the different countries are working on the targets in really different ways, which is very interesting to see. But at the same time, we are working towards the same goal, which is to create a circular economy for plastic. And as I mentioned, different pacts at different stages of that journey. So we can often go to say the pact that we kind of correspond the most with, the UK Plastics Pact. We can often go to them and say, there's like lots of small format flexibles, and we don't really know what's going on. How did you guys address this? And then they're able to really, through all the work that they've put in over the past 2 years or so, allow us to be exposed to that. So we're not starting from we're starting from a really solid base, and we can then say, okay, how does this translate to our experience in South Africa?
Okay. Thank you for that. I see we do have a question here in the Q&A box from Carl, asking if there are any signs of interest for the Plastic Pact in Norway.
I'm definitely the wrong person to ask.
Okay, fair enough. Are you aware of how one goes about joining the Plastic Pact? Would it be a case of sort of an environmental organization based in a particular country that sort of heads the charge, for example, or would it need Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I can say from a South African context, it was that I think it was WWF and a few other organizations that realized that a plastic pact would work in South Africa. And they went about, obviously contacting the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. We also work very closely with RAP, who's also a UK-based charity, to adopt the model. And obviously then they sent out an RFQ, and GreenCape was able to bid for the project. So that's kind of how it works. So yeah, it's definitely organizations in most countries that I've seen, at least, it's been WWF and RAP that are able to start the process.
Okay, and familiar with the sort of ins and outs, and I imagine what would be required.
Yeah.
Then we have another question in the Q&A again from Sahira saying, thanks Deshanya for your response. Sorry, I should have framed my question a bit better. Just wanted to find out if there has been any indicative results regarding progress made towards the 70% IRR, i.e. what is the recycling rate currently in 2022 compared to the about 46% in 2019?
Yeah, okay, cool. No, that makes sense. Sorry. So as I mentioned, members in the pact, and we go through it on a yearly process. So our data and reporting cycle actually starts next month in April. So that's when we will start. We have a very kind of structured template that we send out to our members, probably the bane of their existence because it's so comprehensive. It takes a long time to pull out. But that's going to go out in April, and then we expect to have all of our findings come in by July. We'll then compile that, and then that's when we'd be able to report on the progress made. So we've only actually launched a baseline report so far. So because the Plastics Pact model for South Africa was launched in 2020, you use 2020 almost as a mark year. Because, as we know, it wasn't the best year. So it wasn't a year that we would want us to be a baseline year. So that's why we kind of shifted it for last year to have been our baseline year. And then we'd be able to launch proper figures and, answer that question a lot better once we have our data and insights correlated from our members for this year. So we're about to kick off the process. So that information is definitely to come a bit later in the year.
Okay. Certainly useful just to have the kind of thorough thorough reports and with all the details that I'm sure the
Yeah,
partners are happy to contribute. And yes, completely understand your comments about 2020. It was not exactly your typical year, which would make for a good baseline. So that makes
yeah,
perfect
exactly.
sense.
I mean, a baseline's meant to be comparative, and we didn't feel that it would be able to fulfill that role in 2020. So we only actually have a baseline, which especially under target 3. So this year we'd be able to compare and be able to see if there have been any shifts to the system. But we have some really cool, exciting projects planned under target 3 this year with some really awesome funders. So I do really expect us to see changes, hopefully.
Okay. Wonderful. And then I see there is just a comment in the chat box asking if it would be possible to share the slides, and that it was a great summary of the work being done. So I'll follow up with Deshanya after that, and then if you're happy with that, we can send through a PDF version to the attendees today.
Yeah, of course, that's no problem.
Okay, wonderful. Those are all the questions that we have so far today, but if anyone has any questions at a later stage, you're welcome to email us at webinars@scafrica.org.za, and I'll pass those along. And then just from all of us at SST, thank you everyone for joining us today, and a particular thank you to Deshanya Naidoo for joining us today and for taking the time to put together a very thorough presentation about all the work that's being done with GreenCape and the SA Plastics Pact.
Cool. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to see you next week, same time and same place, but a different link for our next week's webinar. The information for that is available on the SST events page. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your afternoons.